Hi guys, it's April, and guess what? It's March, and I have officially been booktubing for a month. So that means I get to do my first monthly wrap-up. And this time it's gonna be February, because that was last month. So we're gonna wrap up February. And at this point, I'm babbling. You're welcome. So I'm gonna do my first monthly wrap-up and tell you about what I read and a few of my thoughts and opinions on those books. First book I read in February, I did a full video review on, and that was the Trilogy series by Benjamin Dewey. I proceeded to gush over the awesomeness of this book because it is simply amazing. So I will link down in the thingamajigger the full video review, but know that this book is a brilliantly whimsical, satirical mess of awesomeness in a bind-up, and I love it. And it comes out this month. So if you're looking for something to read with your eyeballs and not just your brain, pick this up. Next book that I read in February was The Mind Readers by Lora Brighton. This was actually a free ebook on the Kindle from Amazon, and I wasn't quite sure what I was getting myself into when I decided to randomly pick this up, because sometimes when you pick up some of the free work on Amazon, it doesn't end so well. But surprisingly, this one just captured my attention in a way I wasn't expecting. It is about a girl named Cameron who has the ability to read other people's minds. She is raised by her grandmother, and oftentimes they end up having to run away for various reasons because her abilities start to show, and she's not quite sure what they are running from. But then one day, a boy comes to town. Like most YA novels, boy meets girl, things get crazy. And she ends up learning more about her powers and what is going on and who to trust and who not to trust. And this is the beginning of a series, and now I need more! Which is what happens with free books sometimes. They just suck you in and make you hand over more cash. But it was a really great read. I gave it a 4 out of 5 simply because it surprised me and I enjoyed it. The third book I read in February was Sanctum by Madeleine Roux. This is a sequel to The Asylum, which a lot of people compare to Miss Peregrine's School for Peculiar Children, which has some of its merits because it is set up with images inside of the text to help move along the story. I have trouble reading these kind of books sometimes because I feel like either the storyline or the photos are too forced and it doesn't really flow together correctly. And I kind of felt that in this book too. But this duology is centered around a couple of kids who go to a college campus that has an insane asylum, pretty much, attached to it. And weird things start to happen, and it's a little creepy, and you're not sure what to think. And then Sanctum continues that story and tries to explain how that college town got to where it was at. And while it was good and an enjoyable read, and there was some creep factors, I couldn't grasp it quite the way I wanted to. So I ended up giving it only a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Mainly because it did have a little bit of that creep in there, and I enjoy a good creep. Next book I read in February was The Name of the Star by Maureen Johnson. This was actually the monthly read for Christina Horner's Restricted Section Book Club. Say that 5 times fast without mumbling that. But this was the good read book for the month because the theme was ghost. And pretty much, if it's got anything to do with ghost, I'm all over that. So I was all over this when it was announced. At the beginning, I wasn't too sure if I was going to enjoy this book because it is about a teenager who moves to London, and her name is Rory, and she kind of rubbed me the wrong way for a little while. But after getting into it, I started to really enjoy this book. So Rory moves to London and starts at a boarding school at the same time that some murders start in the London area that replicate the Jack the Ripper murders. And through some series of events, she sees a guy that may or may not be the murderer. And so it just follows Rory's journey into figuring out what is going on with her life, who she is, and what she can do. I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars, mainly because the ending just... The last page, oh my gosh! And I now have to pick up the next 2 in the series just because of the last page. Yeah. Books 5, 6, and 7 for February was the trilogy that I decided to read for the Read That Trilogy readathon. And that was the casting trilogies that consisted of The Blood Ties, Deep Waters, and Full Circle by Pamela Freeman. These books are a fantasy series that center mainly around Bramble and Ash as they live in a country that don't really accept their heritage. They come from a people called the Travelers, who were the original inhabitants of the land, but 1,000 years or so ago, the land was taken over by another group of people. This created some animosity between the two, and they've tried to coexist since then, but that means the Travelers are pretty much second-class citizens. And this is just Bramble and Ash trying to figure out where they fit into this world that may or may not accept them. At the same time, there is another Traveler who is a caster who is starting to raise the dead to get revenge. This ends up in a lot of bloodshed, a lot of magic, some gods, some epicness that fantasy usually entails. So while I was completely drugged up and tired and not really coherent most of the time I was reading this trilogy, I still found it amazing. And maybe that was the reason why I did find it amazing. But I ended up giving these books between 4 and 5 stars, and I like it. And I'm glad I randomly found it on my shelf, even though I didn't know it existed. You never know what you will find on your shelf, so don't forget to look. After I finished the trilogy, I finally picked up The Darkest Part of the Forest by Holly Black. There's been a lot of hype around BookTube about this book right here. It is about a brother and sister, Hazel and Ben, who live in a town that sits alongside of the realm of fairy, and how they have learned to coexist with these not so nice at times beings. There is a horn boy who appears to be in a glass-like coffin who usually captures the hearts and minds of the townspeople in kind of a Snow White-esque fashion, where they don't know who he is or where he comes from or why he's there. They have just built up a story around who and what he might be. And one day, he wakes up and chaos ensues, and the town has to figure out what's going on, and Hazel and Ben are finally about to meet the person or being that they have built stories around all their life. So it's kind of a coming of age, kind of a brother and sister bond kind of book. And it was good, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Next is The Dreamer, Volume 3 by Lora Innes. And I love this series. I have already said this before because it's just, it's so pretty. And I just love it. It's amazing. Volume 3 is mainly about, I believe, the Battle of Harlem Heights. Yes, it is about the Battle of Harlem Heights. The Dreamer series is about a girl from our time who falls asleep, and every time she wakes up, she finds herself in the middle of the Revolutionary War. Now, this volume hits me a little hard because Innes has made me fall in love with Nathan Hale, and Nathan Hale was hung as a traitor and a spy in the Revolutionary War. And this is the volume that all of that goes down. And while I know what's going to happen, it gets me every time. Because whether or not he said, "My only regret is I have but one life to give for my country," he was an amazing man. And he was so young. And it's just sad. And she made me love him. And then he has to die. Well, he doesn't have to die. He already died. But it still makes me sad. But, yeah, I like this series. So pick it up. I read, or attempted to read, was Shimmer by Alyson Noël. This is actually the second book in the Riley Bloom series. I have the first book on my Kindle that I read last month and just barely got through. This book, I couldn't quite make it. I ended up skimming the last of it because Riley in this series is such a brat. I can't handle her, and she annoys the heck out of me. So I decided it wasn't worth my full attention. It got a 2 out of 5 stars for me. This series is about a young girl who dies in a car crash with her parents, and this is her afterlife. So it has a really cool premise, but a really annoying character, and so I gave up. But luckily it was the only book that really did that to me this month. So that's a plus. And the final book that I read for February, you have heard me talk about for the past several videos, and that is Wool by Hugh Howey. I just found this book amazing. Juliet is a wonderful character. She's my favorite in this book by far. And it made me stop and read slower than I normally do because there was just so much there. It's about a dystopian future where humans have been relegated into this silo kind of living. So it's like an inverted building into the ground because the Earth's surface is no longer livable. We're not sure why or what happened, but in this silo we meet several characters, and at the beginning we see a cleaning. Now, a cleaning happens usually because of some kind of criminal intent, or someone just volunteers, but they have to go outside and clean off the sensors, usually with a wool pad, hence the name, so that people can see outside and the sensors can pick up, you know, readings and things like that, so we can see what's going on outside. You don't come back from it. It's basically a one-way ticket. And so the Wool series just goes about what happens after one of these cleanings and what this kind of living and infrastructure is doing to humankind and human mentality, and just the warped kind of reality we have given ourselves if something like this were to happen. And I'm starting shift and I can't wait. So if you're looking for a good sci-fi dystopian novel to read, I recommend the whole Silo series, even though I'm not finished with it. You should pick it up. It's good. That is my February wrap-up. The 11 books that I read in February and what I thought about them. And I hope you enjoyed. Heart your beautiful faces. Bye! And I enjoy a good creep.
That sounds so bad.
It does. Okay, to clarify that,
yeah.
I don't like creepers. I just like creepy.
Yeah.
In a story, not a person.
You might want to say I enjoy
No, I'm just gonna leave that the way it was.
Okay.
Because it's me,
Yeah.
for Maureen Johnson. This was actually, oh crap, my battery's about to die.
Best story ever.
Shake and take.
Okay.
I'm gonna be loud and obnoxious while you're talking on the phone. Burks, Burks, Burks. I got some Burks. What do I want to say? I'm just gonna sit here and pet this book.